Hey Jake, thanks for your question on mentoring men yesterday, where you asked what is resentment or what's the source of resentment. I find resentment has a direct correlation to dependency and a lack of self-reliance. Now let me explain. We all have needs, wants, and desires, and we're born with them, right? We're definitely born with needs. We need to be warm, we need to be fed, we need to be hydrated, we need to be comfortable to a degree. We have to be sheltered, right? And so life, as I've mentioned in other videos, is a process of moving from dependency on others to meet our needs to being independent or self-reliant in meeting those needs, right? So, for example, you as an adult man feed yourself. You certainly weren't born that way, but you do that now. You hydrate yourself. You provide your own shelter, you provide your own hygiene, right? All things you didn't do in the beginning, but you matured from total dependency on other people providing those to being self-reliant in those ways. Now, we have emotional needs, wants, and desires, or you might call them, not necessarily emotional, that you might call them spiritual or inner, personal needs. I don't really care what you call them, but it's an area of life we tend to separate as though things don't work that way. And we tend to hold on to this dependency that other people meet those needs. And when they don't, we have hard emotions, anger, frustration, hostility, contempt, resentment, hatred. All of those are the emotions that will eventually form when the person you were looking to have your need, want, and desire met either doesn't cooperate in doing it, refuses to do it, stops doing it, etc. All of those are evidence of a very transactional and dependency-oriented relationship. That's not actually how an abiding agape or unconditional high regard kind of love works. That kind of love is not possessive. It makes no demands on people. It's a love that is given with no expectation of receipt. But eros, as I've talked about in other videos, is this love that is possessive. It's giving in order to get something back. It's a bit of like playing a tennis game or a business contract. It's very bi-directional. Well, I'll do good to you if you keep doing good to me. A lot of people get married, well, actually all people, I would say, generally get married under an eros kind of perspective, right? And even our wedding vows can kind of reflect this a little bit, in that some people treat their wedding vow and commitment a little bit like a business contract. Here's what I'll give, and here's what you'll give. And so we kind of come into it with a very transactional orientation and perspective that says, here's what I'm gonna, here's my part of the contract, my part of the gig, and you've got yours. And so this is our mindset going into marriage, especially if we got married young or in a long-term relationship. And oftentimes what we did, unbeknownst to ourselves, is we moved that dependency we had on things like our parents and family to meet these kind of emotional, personal needs, and we just transferred the responsibility from mom and dad onto a spouse. And so that works for a little while, or I'll use works very loosely. It works for a little while to have a feeling of that need being met, but you eventually run out of the runway for that approach in a long-term relationship. Eventually partners say, you know what, this feels really inauthentic, not real. This doesn't feel very life-giving, and it's not, because it's not really the kind of love that's possible. It's very transactional. And anytime you have a transactional or a contractual arrangement with somebody, people will eventually start to kind of keep records and score. And so picture, if this was a business contract and it feels like somebody didn't keep their end of the bargain, you make a little bit of note in your ledger. Oh, there's that time where they didn't pay what they should. And the other party's doing this too. And in marriage, you end up having this ledger keeping stuff that starts to happen in what we call the disillusionment stage. And when you get enough of that ledger that's built up, where each party of the contract or the transactional system, in this case husband and wife, when they both have had it, one of them will say, look, this is not working for me, right? I have all these demands that you haven't met. And what's happening is they're building resentment. They're building contempt. The reason they're doing that is because they have dependency. They're depending on the other person to do, right? Here's your checklist of what you said you'd do, and you're not doing it. And that cultivates a negative emotional response in them. And this is happening bi-directionally, usually in marriage, and it's the basis of disillusionment. And so that's where I believe resentment comes from. Now, what you didn't ask, and I'd like to talk about briefly, is what do you do with resentment? How do you get rid of resentment? What most people try, and why half of marriages fail, is because while they're stuck in this mutual resentment stage, because in their mind they got there because of all the items in the ledger. And so what people try to do is get people to fix the items in the ledger. I'll be okay if you would just start meeting my demands, my requirements, right? I'd be okay if you would just go along with my plan for making you dependent, right? And this is happening in two ways. It's a bankrupt system. You can't actually resolve a marriage crisis when two people feel contempt and resentment and they want to hang on to dependency, right? The best you can do is get them to be in some sort of negotiated cease or a ceasefire or truce, but you're essentially buying time. They're not going to really stay deeply connected because that emotion is undermining them like a cancer. And resentment will ultimately grow into further and harder emotions like contempt and hatred, and it'll just destroy a relationship. You can't get rid of contempt without getting rid of dependency. And so one partner, and I believe the best suited person to do this is the man, needs to get rid of contempt. He needs to get rid of resentment. He needs to get rid of his ledger. And the only way you can do that is by getting rid of dependency. You have to say, you know what? I've depended on this person for all these things. And I've experienced all these hard emotions, not because they're doing something to me, but because I'm not self-reliant and I've made them the gatekeeper or the holder, the one responsible, whatever you want to call it, of all these things that are important to me. And so we teach in our community the idea of self-reliance, which people misunderstand largely. But self-reliance just means you say, where am I giving away all of the power that I used to have over what I need, want, and desire? Or maybe you never had it, right? I have all this stuff I want, need, and desire, and I've been asking other people to manage it for me. I want to feel good about myself. I gave that power to my wife. I want to feel connected. I gave that power to my wife. I want to feel respect. Well, I gave that power to her too. I want to feel appreciated. Oh, come to think of it, gave that power to her too, right? And so a man is given all this power over his sense of self, really, to another person. He's become totally dependent. And so of course things break down because that level of dependency is the basis for hard emotions like resentment. So when you take the dependency back, you say, I'm actually going to own my sense of well-being, my sense of respect, my sense of appreciation, connection. Basically, everything you need, want, and desire, when you distill it down, you can self-reliantly provide to yourself. You don't actually need another human being to be whole, right? That would be the worst system ever if every human being needed another human being to have wholeness. We're all whole, right? We're complete. We don't need other people. This is not Jerry Maguire. Nobody completes us. We're fine the way we are, right? And when we take all that back, and I have my power back and my wholeness back, and the other person is no longer somebody who's responsible for those or in charge of those, lo and behold, I stop having any hard emotions toward them, including resentment. And resentment instead gives way to acceptance. You stop judging the people because we're judging them in the first place because they're not providing to us according to our desires. Well, you take their need to be a provider away and you become a self-reliant source, all that goes away too. So the way out of the disillusionment stage and the way out of resentment is self-reliance. It's to start owning all of the parts of you that you ask other people to hold. You ask other people to manage, and you ask other people to provide for. Now, you didn't probably do that in a literal way, but you got into a relationship with different people with the expectation or the assumption that they would be that they would do that. And if they're like everybody else, they tried. They really tried their best, but we're not made to handle and manage one another's well-being, right? We're definitely made in a way that we can share abundance that we have with one another, but we can't hold on to someone else's sense of well-being. That's a horrible, horrible way to relate in a relationship. It will ultimately kill the relationship. It pits people against each other, and it undermines everything. So, to sum it all up, resentment comes from a lack of self-reliance and having dependency for the things that you want, need, and desire on other people. I hope that's been meaningful. If you want to ask questions about it and you're on Mentoring Men, post a question below. If this is on YouTube and you're watching this, the viewer, I would hope that you would do all the stuff, like, subscribe, ding the bell, write comments, whatever. And if you want to talk more about these ideas, feel free to reach out. I can be contacted at sven@mentoring.men, or you're welcome to visit us on the web at www.mentoring.men and get in touch, and we'd love to talk to you. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.